because it's very unusual for someone to see military coup in Chile, a civil war in Africa, and the collapse of an empire all be before the age of 21, right? So it seems it's an unusual setup, right? So, but that's basically the reality, unfortunately, and fortunately as well. Is that yeah, my parents I'm a mixed race guy. My mom is Russian, my dad's Chilean. I was born in Moscow where my parents met and married, and then they moved to Chile. I was a baby, and 5 years, we were going to settle there. I was 5 years old when there was this military coup. My dad was in a concentration camp there, and it was horrible things happening, horrible things, very tragic. And we found ourselves essentially as refugees in a refugee facility, United Nations controlled, and getting asylum in Germany. So it was just this high level of anxiety, of uncertainty, pain, obviously.
Hmm.
And we ended up in Africa when I was 7. So I changed 4 countries by age 7, which is shapes you a certain way,
Wow.
right? As a
Yeah.
child,
Definitely.
and I grew up in this very interesting environment because most of my parents' friends, were Chilean exiles, just like us, and they were all persecuted. They all couldn't get back into the country. Some of them spent time in jail. They were tortured and stuff like that. And it sort of shapes you a certain way when you're in that kind of climate. So it gives you an insight into sort of culture, people, human nature, society, politics, oppression, things like that. So when we came back to Russia after my parents divorced, I didn't have a say in that as well. I ended up in this sort of very oppressive, for me, I mean, from the outside coming in, I was like, what is this
Mm.
place, right? The Soviet Union, there was bread lines, things like that. And I slept in the kitchen for years, so and all of that came crashing down, and all of a sudden everything changed. I was
Wow.
an economics major. I had just graduated with a master's degree, and I was also very creative and musical my whole life. So, and I never thought that of as a profession or anything like that, because I had no one in the family who did that. But because I think there was just this sense of freedom and possibility when
Mm-hmm.
everything collapsed, I said, you know what? It's chaos. It's nothing. I will try something unlikely to succeed. And I started a music career instead of going into banking or academia or things
Wow.
like that. And basically within a year, I was already on national television, and it sort of really skyrocketed very quickly from there, where I became, one of the top pop artists in that whole post-Soviet space, 15 different countries. So
So
that was the story.
it seems like there's a lot of events that led up to that breakthrough for you.
Yeah.
What
Hmm.
was the one main event that you saw that changed your worldview the most out of all these things you saw?
It's a good question. I don't think it was one, but I think the collapse of the Soviet Union. And
Mm.
I grew up Marxist, right? My
Okay.
my parents were Marxist,
Mm-hmm.
so everybody I knew believed in this set of
Your your
economic
dad
model.
fought your dad fought for it, right? In a way.
He was not a politician, but he was definitely a campaigner, right? So
Mm-hmm.
when we were in Chile, the reason he ended up in a concentration camp was he was a communist. My mom's a communist, and the military coup that happened actually had overthrown a socialist president that he campaigned for. My mom spoke at one of the rallies,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of thing, right? My dad gave the president, that his name is Salvador Allende, a tour of the factory he was working on. So they were definitely in the cause, sort of in the
Mm-hmm.
communist cause. The whole family was. He was second generation. So my grandfather was a communist. My grandfather would go into hiding for years under previous dictatorships.
Wow.
So I come from a long line
It
of
goes
essentially
back.
revolutionaries, right? And
Wow.
and my dad wasn't really he was not really a operative or anything like that, but he was definitely from that crew, right, from the communist crew. In fact, after I just went back to Chile, they told me that a lot after the coup, the first meetings of the resistance of the remnant of the Communist Party, were held. One of them was held in the house of our family, which I had no idea about.
Wow.
Like, yeah, so I was they were more involved in it than I thought they were. And I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are badasses, right? Like they're my grandma was distributing, forbidden literature. It was just insane, like all the stories that I've heard. But the reason I tell you this is that I grew up in being essentially completely immersed in this
Hmm.
Marxist socialist ideology. Um, by the time I was a teenager, I could see the system completely failing,
Oof.
in the Soviet Union. So experientially, right? So I am in high
Yeah.
school and I see, you know, scarcity in everything. Everybody's poor. No one is hungry. So the whole equality thing is everybody's equally miserable and poor,
Hmm.
That was sort of the trade-off, like
Equality for all.
yeah, equality
Nothing
for
for
all
everyone.
in misery, right?
Yeah.
So I had a problem with that because I grew up free. I didn't grow up in the Soviet Union. I grew up all over the world. So I grew up going, this doesn't look good, I was exposed to books and I spoke languages. I've traveled the world. So I saw reality on the other side of the Iron Curtain. So I was by my teenage years going, this is BS, right? This is not gonna this is a big prison, basically. And then by the time I got my degree in economics, of course, I was studying Karl Marx. I was studying the economic systems, and the professors were very, really bold. Actually, in
Mm.
hindsight, they did teach us market economics and free enterprise and the theory behind it as well. So I emerged with pretty strong anti-communist convictions by the time I. So maybe that was. It's a long answer to your question, I guess, but I think when it collapsed, it all sort of came to a head where I'm like, this
Hmm.
is it. I'm in free enterprise. I'm in unlimited upside. That's my jam. And I'm gonna go into
Mhm.
music for that.
Wow. That's amazing though that even in like Russia in USSR you were learning about free market and more
Yeah. Hmm.
capitalistic systems in school. I imagine it would be more like censorship and you hear about the Iron Curtain and there's not a lot of information going across, but it
Hmm.
seems like you have such a traveler's worldview where you've seen things from every perspective
Yeah.
and you
Yeah.
see the pros and cons of everything,
Yeah.
and that's taught you so much about life. Can I ask you, was there anything you missed about USSR that you
No, nothing.
like?
I miss nothing.
Okay.
My mom misses something. I mean, there's this whole generation of ex-Soviets that are very nostalgic,
Mm,
and in
Mhm.
Russia, there's a lot of nostalgia actually, but I'm just not that guy. I'm the guy who wants to own my future. I want to try things. I want to risk things, and I don't like hierarchical systems. I don't like oppression. I don't like restricting free speech or movement.
hmm.
I abhor it. I have very, very strong feelings about it.
Mhm.
And that must have been amazing then working with Boris Yeltsin, him
Hmm.
coming up, like thinking that Russia can finally be free and
Yes, yeah, yeah,
democratic and the future is going to be so different.
yeah. We all thought
Uh,
that. Yeah,
well, now it's kind of,
we were
yeah.
naive. We were very naive. Yeah.
Wow. What was that like working with Boris and having
Well,
that
his
vision,
team.
the optimism?
Yeah, it was just for me. It was this. I wrote this song called "Our Generation," and the
Hmm.
chorus went, "Our generation, a sign of liberation." That was the chorus. So it was very defiant. It was a very defiant song, but it really reflected how I felt. I felt that this is incredible. This 75 or whatever years of communism ended, and there's all these incredible, gifted, bright, excited people that are educated. They want to build a different future. Of course, I was sort of in the artistic circle, so I saw the collapse of almost like the establishment where there were gatekeepers. Only these people could make it on TV or radio, right? That's it.
Hmm.
Mhm.
To complete free market. And it immediately produced this crop of extraordinary innovative artists, and I was one of them. And when I actually wrote the song, it was such an anthem that I didn't want to be the one, just me singing it, but I actually invited them there. So there's pieces in the song that they sing with me, and in the music video. So it's really more about a new wave, right, of a new generation. And at the time, we really did think that this is incredible. We're going to see a resurgence, right? Because we see so much creativity and talent and youthful energy. And the Boris Yeltsin's people, he was trailing in the polls against the communists. The communists, there was a lot of resentment against the chaos that produces, the collapse of a system always produces chaos,
Totally.
lack, a lot of poverty. A lot of people suffered hunger, even, and stuff like that, especially in the provinces outside of the capital. The capital was always kept fed, like they do in any empire, right? Rome was always Rome, and then everything outside of Rome doesn't matter. Basically, that was sort of the idea. But but there was a lot of resentment. Crime was on the rise. Economic inequality was just abhorrent, because people were used to a government subsidized everything, and it all collapsed. So there was a huge surge in populism in bringing the good old days, right? So the communists were actually winning. They were leading it back. They were leading in the polls, and they were basically running on a platform of restoring the good old days, equality, order, all of those things, safety, and of course, Boris Yeltsin was the democratic sort of candidate against bringing the Soviet Union back. Yeah. And of course, we jumped on the opportunity. They reached out and they used my song as an anthem on many of the ads and things like that. And of course, we went on TV, on radio. We toured. We did big tours, multi-city tours with a bunch of other people as well. And it was very, very exciting. And then in hindsight, it was actually pretty careless, because in that world, even now, you do something like that, and losing a career is sort of the best case scenario, right? Like worst things can happen.
Dangerous.
It was actually dangerous. Yeah, it was actually dangerous. But in your 20s, you don't think about things like that. You feel like you're immortal, right? So
that's us.
And I was truly bought into this idea. I didn't want the communists to come back. I was very passionate about it. So it was very, very exciting, and he won, and of course by 1999 he personally handed the keys to the kingdom to Vladimir Putin, and everything started reversing. So it was definitely a disappointment. Politicians will always overpromise and underdeliver, I guess. That's sort of the thing.
That's the lesson.
That's true.
Yeah.
How was the transition for you, like once he passed on the leadership to Vladimir Putin?
At first it was great. Vladimir Putin was a very exciting politician at the time, and he's smart. He's a lawyer. He's dynamic. He talked a good talk, and he talked about even joining sort of the Western countries, even joining basically the West. It was the thrust of it at the time. Yeah. And if you look at his early interviews, you see a lot of that, of just very, very common sense. But I believe something changed, something shifted, where it seems that he was reversing course, and something happened. I think he felt also that he wasn't respected enough, and the things like that, right? So you don't know another person's brain, but he's also a spook. He's a KGB agent, right? So deception and double talk and all those things are part of the tradecraft, and we'll never know if he was sincerely going in that direction and then shifted, or there was a strategy that I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert in these things, but I have met a good number of people who are big players in that era, in that world, personally. So I have some sort of
Yeah.
experiential and, eyewitness kind of knowledge of it, but there's so much great research around it. So I probably wouldn't be a comprehensive source of information for that.
Christian, can I ask you then? It For us as young people, it feels like there's very little hope. I mean, Said and I are Lebanese. I live in the United States, and you know, I feel like our generation is kind of screwed by AI out on the horizon, and then politics is always making us feel very helpless, and we try to, I don't know, advocate for change, and change never happens, and
Right.
it's so disillusioned. Like I feel like there's nothing we can do when it comes to politics and make a change in the world. Versus you've seen a lot of big changes when it comes to social
Yeah.
change. So what advice would you give young people like us that are fed up with politics, but I don't know, still want to engage in a way to make change?
It's a complex. I would say it depends on who you are,
Mm-hmm.
what your calling is, right? I have friends who were in the U.S. I mean, I know some politicians in the U.S. personally, some pretty high level politicians, and I can see that they are convinced that this is their calling. This is what they do, and they are there. They're playing the game with the pros and the cons. And I
Mm-hmm.
have people in on a high level in Russia as well, members of parliament who are good people actually, and I see them navigating that world.
Mm-hmm.
And my sense is that look, if this is what you're supposed to be doing, engage fully, and but understand the pros and the cons, right? Understand the downsides of playing that game, being in that space. So I think it really depends on the person. I am not that person.
Mm-hmm.
you know I really personally, this is my personal philosophy, is that I don't want to attach my wagon to any train at all.
I see.
So I'm more of a, hey, agency is everything. you know
Mhm.
I don't feel called to change a nation, although I had some influence in the past, but it was really
Mm-hmm.
more, it was sort of situational, I guess. um, but I feel like if you try to change a political course of a nation, you better be Nelson Mandela grade kind of guy.
You have to be perfect, is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
No, and well, he was actually really imperfect, by the way,
Mm,
on many levels. But you need to be made of steel and be willing to be cheated, jailed, all of those things, assassinated possibly, if you want to really produce change. Like there's this guy in Russia called Navalny, and he died in jail.
totally.
Just
Mm-hmm.
he was made of that material, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And he really believed in it, and he paid for with his life.
Oof.
Now, it's not about even being heroic or not. To me, I just don't see politics as I don't see politics as the pinnacle of things. I see politics
Mm-hmm.
very much downstream from culture.
Mm.
So my personal focus is on culture, not on politics, because culture shapes politics, not the other way around, actually. You know.
Yeah.
So that's sort of my take. And culture is basically what you believe, what I believe, collectively, what we believe and act, how we act, and what we do with our lives collectively,
Mm-hmm.
and how much of us is there that believe that way, that think that way. And
So it's
my
shaping the
basic
perspective of the community.
precisely, there's a critical
Mm.
mass there's a cultural critical mass that shapes the economy, the politics of a nation, things like that, right? So, for example, that's why I love being in the United States,
Mm-hmm.
is that with all the messiness of the United States, there's a critical mass of people who believe in agency and their personal role in their lives, in
Mm-hmm.
building a future and pursuing happiness and free speech and liberty. And they believe in their that their future is in their hands. Like in America, the baseline is
Yeah.
that, you know. So politics will be downstream from there, because those people are going to be voting, demanding, sort of claiming things, et cetera, et cetera. And even if it's messy, the baseline of America is extremely full of life and vitality, innovation, creativity, and industriousness. So people here want to build stuff. Basically, there's always fringe people, but there's a critical mass of people who want to build stuff. If you go to other places, and I've lived on, this is my 6th country and my 4th continent. So I go to, for example, I go to Mozambique, where I grew up. Every couple of years, we started an after-school academy there called the Ascend Academy that takes pupils out of, like, a very small project that helps kids in extreme poverty learn certain things and be employable, right? So we go and visit.
Yeah.
And when you go there, for example, to pick a neutral, quote unquote, place, not sort of divisive kind of place, there's a certain culture. And creativity, industriousness, ambition, pursuit of happiness, entrepreneurship is not in that DNA of the culture.
It's a cultural thing.
It's a culture. So they will vote for politicians that say, we'll take care of you.
I see.
The government will take care of you. And this other government will not take care of you. Or, we've been taking care of you for 65 years. They've literally had the same party in power for 50 years.
Like the chieftain of a tribe kind of concept.
Exactly. So it's a very hierarchical, paternalistic government. So the culture supports that kind of government, not the other way around. So when the Americans go, like, I laugh at some of the blunders of American international politics when they go, don't you want freedom and this and this and this and this? And the answer is no, they don't. No. You think
in the Arab world, like, even us as Lebanese people, it's the same concept. Like, whenever you have a discussion about politics in Lebanon, it will come to a point when you see that the person is running out of things to say, and they'll just say, "Is like, you know what? We should just let the French recolonize us, or the British colonize us, and let them deal with everything." Like, what? Why? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it's just because, like, a certain community benefited from the benefits of the colonizer, they think that this should happen again. They should bring it back. But then they forget about, like, the other communities that are also oppressed and affected by it.
And the thing is, the change will never happen top down. That's the tragedy of it all, for me. So I might sound a bit fatalistic here, right? But I go, these are much bigger, almost like tectonic shifts than a president or 2 or 3 even in a row. There's just more layers to it. So America just happened to enjoy the alignment of stars. A not very populated continent with tons of resources that had a certain type of people move there in a certain way in a certain years, right before the Industrial Revolution. Then the Industrial Revolution picked up, and there's the Protestant work ethic is a cultural sort of a cultural phenomenon. So certain types of people moved there first, and they created almost like seeded a cultural, almost like a yeast, that spread. So it's multicultural, but it's monocultural in some ways. It's multi-ethnic, but it's monocultural.
Could you elaborate on the monocultural part? Like, what specific culture is it?
So, for example, you have, like, even in the first waves, there were the Irish, the British, the Scots, right? All those people, the Italians, all of those people. Then there was waves of other, like, Chinese, that kind of thing, Latin America, etc. But imagine if, like, you're creating a piece of bread, right? And you're massaging the thing, right? And you put some yeast so it rises, and the yeast spreads into the whole thing, right? So that's what I mean, right? And but so you can have Italians, Indians, Chinese, all of those things that have their sort of subcultural sort of nuances, like tribes within tribes. And by moving to the US, they actually form sub-tribes of the old tribes, right? So the Lebanese in the US that are third generations are not exactly the same as the Lebanese back home.
No,
because they've been Americanized, and
definitely changed.
They create almost like a a derivative from the Lebanese and the U.S. cultures, etc. So it's tribes and tribes and tribes and tribes, and they clash and they mold, but there's an overarching sort of central thing that spreads throughout the whole thing. So, and it's freedom, entrepreneurship, creativity, freedom of speech, human rights. It spreads and it spreads and it spreads. Even the slaves that were enslaved now that are free, they wake up ahead and they go, wait a minute, this is not American, what you're doing to us. So that's how the civil rights movement is born. They get that bug, right? This freedom bug. And they go, no, this is, and they start impressing it upon society to change their ways. And the society actually does change their ways. So that's sort of what I mean, right? But I think it's very true in the opposite direction as well. So for example, the reason I am both heartbroken and also sort of at peace about Russia and the direction it's going is that, I mean, it's an Eurasian country, right? So it's not really European. So, and from the inside, I know there's essentially two cultures there. The intelligentsia, the creative class in Russia, even from the Tsar's moment before the revolution, they were very European. Their main, if you read Tolstoy, War and Peace, like a large portion of War and Peace is in French with Russian translation at the bottom, in French. Why? Because the nobility, they spoke French as a first language.
Wow.
You know?
Was this had to do with the Tsar being also related to different kings and queens?
Yes,
Like,
yes.
I think he was the original Tsar, Nicholas, I think the second or something, was like the son of Queen.
They were all related.
Victoria or something like that.
Yeah, the noble, he was very much related to the British royal family. But that was the way of the nobility in Europe in general. They would ensure alliances by marrying each other and things like that, and conserving the fortunes and the power and influence, etc. So they would summer in Cannes, for example, or go, that's what they did. So the nobility, and then even in the Soviet times, sort of the intelligentsia, higher educated, they were extremely enlightened and very much European and culturally European. So the values were there, and they spread it to each other. Even when there's a lot of oppression, secretly underground, the culture persists, right? The yeast goes where it goes.
Wait, so can I ask you, Christian, on that point? So right now, America is going through like a change when it comes to immigrants and how people treat immigrants and people from different countries, and it seems to be a bit more hostile. Do you think this is just a temporary thing, or you think there's like an actual pivotal change with how this?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think it's really more. That is actually that's theatrical, I would say, more than anything. It's political theater.
Yeah,
and
it's like media, not actual reality of how people think.
No, I think it's politicians play the card, right? And basically, the Democrats want to open borders because illegal immigrants are more historically prone to making more babies and voting Democrat, for example, right? So that's a strategic move. That's self-seeking, completely strategic.
Totally.
And then the Republicans, they see that. I mean, everybody knows that it's wrong to have complete open borders. If you don't have any borders, you don't have a nation. Bottom line, right? And it's just common sense. Like let's say you live in a neighborhood.
Too much change is happening too fast.
Yeah, like you live in the U.S. or Lebanon area. Somebody comes into your house, knocks on your door, says, "Hey, I lost everything. Would you feed me?" You may or may not feed that person, but you'll set conditions. You will open the door, or not open the door, or I'll feed you for a week, but you'll stay over here. Or you might even invite them into your house and say, "Hey, I have an extra bedroom. But you need to go find a job, and I'll help you." But if they start bringing their cousins into your house without permission, or they just overstay their stay, or they just want to eat your food, your tone towards them, your relationship towards them will change. Correct? Like it's just common
Yeah, totally.
sense.
I
It's
understand.
common sense. So if you open a border and let 10 million people start overwhelming your food supply, not food supply, but your sort of the funds dedicated for a social a safety network for people who are struggling, medical systems, schools, um, people will have a problem with that. So there's going to be another politician that says, see, these other guys did this. It's the immigrants. And it's not the immigrants. It's just politicians playing games, so they will hype up the fear of the immigrant and say that they eat cats and dogs, and say that they're all drug dealers, and it's just stupid, right? It's just theater.
Mm-hmm.
And then the result of that is just another more theater. Oh, we're going to deport them all. And I have friends who have been here their whole lives, who some of them entered by foot through the desert, and they've built a life here, and they pay taxes, they build significant businesses, and now they're sort of looking over the shoulders to see if there's an ICE going to show up and reverse their citizenship. They're already citizens. I have a friend who has a PhD and has been very influential here in the United States, and because his mom lied in the application for citizenship when he was 12 years old, he's at risk of being stripped of his citizenship because of what his mom did. So that's not common sense. My point is, right?
It's not right.
Yeah.
But that's the theater.
They're overdoing
right?
it.
Yeah. So it's common sense, and the thing is, politicians are not interested in common sense. They're interested in votes.
Do you think after Trump's term ends, do you think we'd see another Republican president, or would people lean towards a Democrat for
my sense
all
is
the fiasco that's happening till now?
My sense is that we'll probably see another one, because and the reason for that is because the
Really?
Democrats, really are not unified, and they've gone way left in their rhetoric. So by going way left, they're alienating the center. So they're not centrists anymore; they're extreme left. And then the Republicans go extreme right. But I think honestly, if I were to, from my perspective, evaluate who is more extreme, I think the left is way more extreme, and because of that, they are out of touch with the reality. And the reality is that people don't want extremes, so they will hire somebody. They will hire somebody to fix the extreme. That's why Trump won, right? But if the Democrats don't come back into the center, I think they'll lose again. That's sort of my sense. But if they come to the center, which the thing is, I just don't see any signs of that.
Right.
They just don't have that one person. They don't have like a Kennedy.
Yes,
says,
I think that's a big problem.
A unifying force, an inspirational
no characters. Figure. They don't have like proper characters with.
They really don't. Yeah.
Influential charisma. Says the right things. That can carry the responsibility with the words that they say, and they can hold themselves accountable. No, they just it's just all over the place.
I think so. I doubt that they will win, but it's everything's. The thing is, that's the system is a fantastic system. Yeah, I mean things can change, and people come out of nowhere with that kind of. That right person comes out of nowhere, and all of a sudden he unifies the party behind them.
I know, right?
But it's
so random sometimes.
Sometimes they are very random. That's very true. But I do think it's unlikely. Yeah, it's unlikely, and it's sad because it is healthy when the sides sort of take turns, or they counterbalance each other a little bit.
Balance is so important.
Yeah.
What do you think? From all the economic systems that you've seen, Chile, USSR, Africa, the US, what is the best economic system?
Well, I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, I live here, obviously, so I vote with my feet, and but to me, it's free enterprise. I really don't like the word capitalism. I like the word free enterprise, because it's if a system allows the individual to make a choice and to take a risk and to not be afraid for their lives or their property, not be afraid that their currency is going to be devalued by 50% or everything will be taken away from him or her. They will take more risks, and people are just we're inherently creative, and we want to build a better future, and the system that allows that and has enough of almost like an ecosystem for that is the best system, in my opinion, right? So, and what I see is that, and obviously it's very imperfect, but it is the best of the things that exist. My point is, because really, we don't want the average person doesn't care about ideologies. They just want their children to be happy. They just want war to not happen. They don't want surprises. They want a chance, opportunities. But that's what they want. And I mean, what is an ecosystem that allows for that? That's the ecosystem, I believe. And but also I think it really depends on. There are also variants of free enterprise that are, there's the Western European version of it. There's others, right? There's brands of it, sub-brands of that cultural DNA. I just happen to be sort of as a human being, very sort of libertarian minded, and a lot of it has to do with my origin stories that I just had some. Just leave me alone. I have such an aversion to authoritarian sort of rule and monocultural like groupthink, where people are afraid to speak up and things like that. I have a massive aversion because I saw that, and I hate it so much. So I can't really flourish in environments like that. So I'm in America because that's where people like me, we do well. We keep our, we don't lose our minds. But I have friends, for example, in places like Russia, where there is, for example, a social contract between the government, like, look, don't challenge our power and we'll let you make money, sort of thing, but shut up, keep your thoughts to yourself and play the game and know the rules and know your place. And there are people that can exist in that. And I wouldn't be able to. I would wither and die,
And I think if you look at history too, you might think that's not very sustainable.
No, it's not, because it always leads to, environments like that, they by definition, suppress creativity, diverse thinking, experimentation, innovation. They suppress it by definition. And that suppresses economic growth, and that basically leads to misery and eventually stagnation and also violence and things like that. So that's just the truth, But I think last time I checked, 72% of the population of the planet is under one or another type of authoritarian rule. So I don't know, 5.8 billion, something like that. Yeah. So there's just not a lot of places on Earth, like I mean, we think it's like modernity is supposed to bring sort of civilized freedom. I don't think that's the reality, unfortunately. So, and then even some enclaves of democratic free countries are losing that as well. So anyway, so to answer your question, I think free enterprise is the best, but also depends on who you are as a human being and where you will flourish. And it's sort of as a full circle from impacting politics. I will choose my environment rather than try to change my government. That's sort of that's my personal decision, right? I'm not going to be like a freedom fighter in Mozambique or an opposition fighter in Russia, because I think in culture, not politics, and I see culture supporting the thing that I don't like.
Yeah.
So it's me trying to fight against something that the majority of people actually want.
And for you, your culture wasn't necessarily like where you were born or the people you were around. Your values. Right? Your ideas.
And I took them from different places.
And then you found a place that matches your ideas.
That's exactly it. So it's like this place, this country, imperfect as it is, matches my values. So I'd rather be here than be in a place where most people actually don't want what I want anyway. So what's the point, of me trying to change the politics there?
Totally.
Isn't
Said?
Yeah, isn't it ironic? This is something I was thinking about while we were just talking. Isn't it ironic that um, right-wing conservatives prefer liberal economic models over, conservative economic models? Like, for example, capitalism is a liberal economic model,
Yeah.
but conservatives, you know, they follow that economic model. While if you go to the left, they actually, they prefer socialism and communism. You'd think based on, like, obviously the political models that they follow are not the same, but you think that economically they wouldn't be going for the opposite side's uh, promoted economic model. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. Yes, it does make sense. I think and that's concerning. I agree. And I would say it really is
We're stealing each other's
strange.
ideas.
Yeah, it's very, like, I think I saw a surge in sort of these neo-Marxist ideology stuff in mainstream narratives, right? Like I saw an article in Teen Vogue that
Yeah.
literally had whole sentences lifted from Karl Marx,
Mhm.
like terminology.
Mhm.
And I'm like, Teen Vogue, what the heck? And and I
Yeah.
was so upset. And but I realized part of the reason I wrote a book actually called Little Book of Big Reasons to Love America, and it's basically from the immigrant standpoint. And the part of the reason I wrote the book, my wife actually said, you should write a book because you talk about this all the time. You should get it out of your system, right? And but I was talking to my wife, going, "Do you see this very, very, very destructive ideas popping up in mainstream pop culture? Can't they see this is really bad?" And she goes, "No, they can't, because they don't know where it comes from, and they don't
Mhm.
know what the
Oh,
effect is." And I think I have a sense that a lot of it came from sort of this is decades long trend to put in put these ideas implant these ideas in hospitable environments for ideas like that, which is always the colleges.
Mhm.
yeah.
It's always it's always young people, very idealistic, who can go,
Yeah.
yeah, this is unjust, this is unfair, we should fix it. And then the fix is where they get you, right? They all point to the right problems, but then the
Yeah.
fix is the thing that is off, right? And they
People
don't see the
are fed
difference.
up. People are
Yeah,
young people. They're tired. They think life
yeah,
is
yeah.
hopeless and bleak in the future, and they want
That,
change. They want something right now. Give me that change right now. Give it.
yeah.
What can
So
we
so
do?
black and
Tear
yeah,
it all
exactly.
apart.
So
Start from
so
scratch.
and that's very, yeah, that's so the young people are much more
Then
prone
they get a
to,
job and it's not the same anymore.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, exactly. So what they say is that if you're not a socialist when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. Like that's,
Mm,
it's a bit of obviously an overstatement, but it's sort of generally speaking true, because with age you start understanding nuance and context, and when you're young it's really binary, right? A lot of
mhm.
things are binary. So the colleges are a really good environment to put in things like that. And there's some indication that some of that stuff is actually pretty much, there's like there is a conspiracy sort of movement towards financing certain things in certain places, so it spreads. And I don't know if it's
Totally.
true or not.
Things are out of our
uh,
control. That's for sure. Now, there are many
yeah,
things that are influencing us. I
yeah,
mean,
but
that's
I
for
do think
sure.
that if you
Hmm.
put that in the colleges, let's say in the 90s, people who graduate in the 2000s probably get into power in the 2010s, and they still have
Yeah.
those ideas.
Mm.
So that's how it changes culture. And
It's a long term thing
it is a
too.
long-term thing. Yeah, so
Hmm.
it's a long-term thing, but it seems to be a real thing
Hmm.
in America for sure, and definitely a hugely big thing in the Western Europe.
Hmm. Oh,
So
I
America
see.
is trailing behind Western Europe when it comes to
Hmm.
trends like that. It seems like.
So what's the next trend then for that the US should or will adopt?
It's a
Like,
good question, and I think, I don't know. I believe in culture, as I said.
okay.
In my set, I think America is culturally very unique. It really, truly is. Like, and people just don't understand that until they maybe spend some time here and go, oh my gosh, like people think differently here. And it's so my theory is that even though some and many sort of damaging ideologies will always circulate in a place that is there's free speech. Obviously, you're not going to shut down free speech. It's a core value. So some bad things will be free speech, free spoken.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's sort of part of the reason of being in a free society where there's people are entitled to their opinions.
And then you debate,
even if they're stupid opinions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my sense is that the cultural DNA of the United States as an organism has inherent, very strong antibodies against destructive ideologies, and the antibodies will repel them at a much higher rate than, let's say, even Western Europe, for example.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which has a free society, but it's weakened. I think the culture is weakened. There's other cultures, of course, many that don't even have they don't even have the antibodies because they've been taken over by sort of authoritarian top down. Like the culture is different. It's not a free place. It's just not a free place culturally. People don't think like free people. But in places that people actually do historically think like free people, a lot of it has been taken away slowly. I think America is distinctively not immune, but has antibodies to fight it off because of the critical mass, because of the role it plays, the robust economy. It is separate. There's less, there's all kinds of factors that factor into that. So my theory is that it's probably going to repel a lot of it and then reset and recalibrate. Now, how long is that going to last? I don't know. Every empire declines eventually.
So when you say repel, what exactly is it repelling?
It's repelling things that don't gel with the American way.
Okay. So would you say maybe like the current spread of potentially right-wing extremism, which is nowadays, whenever you see YouTube videos, there's like symptoms of fascism even to the point that they're spreading in the US. So would you say like that is what the antibodies will be repelling? Or...
Yes. Yeah. Basically, I think it will. I think there's a critical mass of people who have a monoculture in the sense of this is American, this is anti-American, or non.
Yeah.
So, for example, on the right, if you have sort of these ultra-violent, fascist kind of looking, feeling like raids, mass deportations that you can see, you can feel the infringing on personal rights, on almost
now.
like on like a wholesale radical, forceful, violent way of dealing with something that's very real, but the way you deal with it makes you not feel American. I think people will see that and they will go, yeah, this, I agree that you're trying to fix something, but not this way. This is not the American way. In the same sense that, for example, on the extreme left, you would go, people, we are a multicultural thing. We want to accept everyone. That's American. But claiming that if you don't affirm my gender this specific way, you're a bigot, it's not American. It really isn't. Or if you're claiming that just because you changed, you had a surgery, you're not going to compete in you're a guy and you're going to compete in women's sports and beat all the women. That's not American. It's not an inclusion. It's a manipulation of what America is. And people take it, and then they're like, this is stupid. And that's what they'll say. And they'll vote that way. So I think that's sort of how it works, right?
It's all distractions and like fighting over
so the extremes un-American extremes will be essentially repelled by the organism of culture. And the way they do it is by free speech, is by legal free elections, all those things.
I think the main element that's going to be the catalyst for this is um, the sudden emergence of a democratic representative that would, he would take the opportunity of this chaos and say, like, yo, I think Trump is a dictator. We don't want this shit anymore. This is un-American. Especially after, like, this is only his first year, so 3 more years of what's happening now is going to be like almost is going to be oppressive for the American people. So if any democratic representative comes off as like someone who's like with a bit of charisma, um, and knows what like sounds like he knows what he's talking about, doesn't sound like an extremist, he's easily going to beat JD Vance, in 4 years time. Just It's just going to be but it's going to be a really sudden emergence. So
Yeah.
I think that will be like the final element of like that balance that you've been talking about, and like bringing back the US to kind of like the central to the center instead of the extremes, which is the polar extremes, which it is at right now.
Yeah, I think so, and that's why I really am a believer in the American culture. Really,
Yeah.
it's because it has this tendency to have a strong core that will just. I don't think it can be corrupted per se. It can be manipulated, and it will still react against eventually. And so I just that's why I'm here. I feel like I think America has a good shot at having a good decade.
Mm-hmm.
Of any country on the planet, and there's
Out of all the
other
countries.
economic,
Yeah.
We hope so.
There's
We
other
hope so.
economic factors as well, like fuel dependency, fuel independency, food independency, big market, all of those. There's other layers to it, but I think all
Yeah.
those things together, America is in a really. I would be very bullish for America, even with all the theater going
Mm-hmm.
on and all the chaos going on. This is the place where has the best chance of doing okay.
So from an economic standpoint, would you say that America is gonna continue going up, or is there gonna be like maybe a certain crash coming soon, or because we've seen
Yeah.
some symptoms of like cracks lately.
Mm-hmm.
There's definitely been a few drops that were unexpected. Yes, there's a bit of a bullish market that's going on but at the same time, if you look at like previous crashes, that was like one of the major symptoms. You'd see this sudden and sharp rise, um, including like prices of precious metals. You see this sharp rise, and then at a certain point, it just comes all crashing down, like a very steep crash. So, do you think we're seeing symptoms of that happening, or is it just going to be stable if at some point it's going to stabilize and it's going to be fine?
Well, I mean, I'm not an expert. I really not. I'm not. I can't say. I think I'm more of a almost like a general philosophy, high level kind of guy, right? And I have an
Okay.
economics degree, but I'm not in economics professionally. So,
You can say it's your
but
opinion. We don't have to say it.
yeah, but I would say that any economic crash is part of the game.
Mm.
Recalibration is part of the game. That's sort of
Okay.
that's the beauty of
Balance.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a rebalance, and that's sort of it's an advantage of America rather than a disadvantage, because if you go to unfree places like China, for example, a lot of
Yeah.
this economic stability is basically just manipulation, currency
Mm.
manipulation, numbers manipulation. They lie about their numbers,
Yeah.
and eventually it's almost like, and that's what happened to the Soviet Union, is
Mm.
that it was propped up, propped up, propped up. It's a house of lies, and then
Until it
reality catches
crashed.
up with it, and the whole thing comes crashing down. And America is truthful. It's because of the system. So when things are bad, it will crash, but then it will reconstitute quickly, within a year or two or three. And
Yeah.
then, but that sort of the government controlled top down regimes, they will show the good face, and they will manipulate, and they will do anything to stay in power, but eventually there's some sort of cascading effect of collapse, devaluing the currency by half, that kind of thing. But I would say, so with America, even if there's a crash and they come regularly, that's just part of the game. But I would say, to me, what I see is that is America always won because of technology and innovation, and because of manufacturing. And what happened, America got really weak because they decided to outsource their manufacturing for
Yeah.
to improve to improve
Bottom line.
profits. Yeah, the
to
bottom
make
line.
money.
But they outsourced it to somebody who's actually an adversary to America, and they
Yeah.
propped up China, and they literally, people think that China is this economic miracle. It's not. It's
It's created
it's
by
really
us.
It's been years in
America.
the making.
Yeah,
Years.
it's
Decades.
America. America gave China the growth, and the Chinese people gave that growth creativity and entrepreneurship. But it's not the
Mhm.
government at all. So I think now it seems to me that America is reindustrializing, and I think that's a huge deal. Huge deal. I think it's very, very important that it does. And then with technology, because of the nature, the entrepreneurship, the freedom, the capital, all of that stuff is here. America is definitely leading in AI, and AI is the future. I mean,
The future of
it's like,
everything.
yeah, it's everything will change, and America is strongly in the leadership position. I doubt that America will lose that race. Highly doubt it. Highly, highly doubt it. So I think those things as well are, I think, powerful factors, plus stability, plus strong military, food independence, fuel independence. I'm bullish because of those things, like long term.
I wanted to ask you one last question about a bit of a segue, but pop anthems that are social change. What do you think are like good uses of culture that changes society? And I wanted to specifically ask you about "We Are the World," Michael Jackson, and
Yeah.
what do you think of that song? What do you think about their cause for raising donations for Africa and
Yeah.
donations for Africa? All that, was it a scam? Is it real? What do you think? You think that song is self-serving or good?
I mean, artists are. We Are the World had a huge impact on me. Huge impact, and I was. It was so Live Aid was first in Great Britain for Ethiopia, I believe, and then We Are the World was basically the answer, the American answer, with Quincy Jones, Michael Jackson, and Lionel Richie writing the song, basically being the initiators of it. But to me, it was a massive, it was a huge, almost like paradigm shift for me, because I grew up poor. I grew up in the third world, and then I grew up in places that are not poor; they're extreme poor, like under $2 a day poor. Mozambique. So I know, I lived in those places. I know how people live, and when that came out, I was just so inspired. I would watch it over and over and over again. I know every verse, every person, every story behind it, the behind the scenes. I've watched it, and I was sort of starting to become. Uh, I was. It was before I started my career, but it stayed with me. And I'm like, if I become successful, maybe I can see now that I can have a platform and I can help the poor, which I didn't know that was even a possibility before. And so, to answer your question, in the grand scheme of things, those things really are culture changers, but they're not economic changers, in my opinion. It's a drop in the bucket. It's theater, but it's good theater in the sense that it's theater that changes the psyche, the collective psyche of people, right? There are poor people, and somehow there's got to be a way where we mobilize the international community to help somebody has a famine, for example, right? So it is theater in the sense of impact is very minimal. I mean, they actually raised very good money, but it's in the grand scheme of things. As an economist, I understand it's nothing, but I think the theater of it changes the culture, and that's, I think, the highest value is that. So it changed me, and when I became successful as a musician, I happened to start working with this orphanage. And a friend of mine was running this charity, and then I was like this guy who goes, he was going to do like a sports event for all the orphanages in Moscow, like several thousand kids. And I said, why don't we do a big show? I'll bring all my celebrity friends, and these kids are going to get it for free, and it's just for them. So we started doing that, and it grew and it grew, and it was like acknowledged by the government and the president even. We heard that the president is happy through like the channels, Putin, and quite, I'm not exaggerating. Somebody called my friend and says, "Daddy's happy."
Yeah.
Like they, I mean, I was like, "Dang, wow, Daddy."
I'm
Okay,
glad.
But to me, that was actually a big deal. And then you mentioned Michael Jackson, and I found out that Michael Jackson was doing a stadium show, and I said to my buddy, I'm like, okay, this is 0.1% success rate possibility, but what if we time the event to his show, and then we see if we can reach out somebody in their team. And so we basically found a way to reach his team, and we heard back that he might be interested. And until literally the last minute, we didn't know if he was going to show up until they basically called and said, "Yeah, we're on our way."
Wow.
And so we're in this sports arena with a bunch of kids, and we had these kids learn Michael Jackson songs. They made some choreography to it and everything. And I'm sitting there, and he's my idol. Like I do music
He's
because
a hero.
He's him, Prince, and some other people like that. Like that's why I do music. I'm in my 20s, and he walks into my event that I thought of. So, and of course the kids just lose their minds, right? And he spends a few minutes, maybe, I don't know, half an hour total there, and he leaves, and I didn't. So, and the one thing that I didn't do, this is like a funny story, that one of my biggest regrets in life is that I was like maybe 2 meters away from him, and I never said hi, and I never expressed to him how much his music meant to me. And I was one of the guys, I was right there, and because I froze, I totally froze, so like, totally lost it. And then I realized that I was supposed to go on stage in a few minutes, and he's in the audience, and I completely freaked out and going, I can't. This is impossible. I'm not gonna offend Michael Jackson with my lowly art. And he walked out like maybe 15 minutes before I had to go on stage, and I was so happy, because I was freaking out, losing my mind, and I was like, no, I can't be performing in front of Michael Jackson. So anyway, so that's my Michael Jackson We Are the World charity story.
Mm-hmm. He was such an inspiration. Saeed, last thing for you.
He was. I did have one question, since we were talking about like donations, and like this is something we were curious about. How, like, maybe this is, I don't want to, might come off a bit as a rude one, but these donations that they are created to be sent to Africa, are parts of them like a scam, or are any of them like bogus, or are they just like all trustworthy?
Well, for example, I have a small charity, right? It's called the Ascend Mission Fund. You can look it up, ascendmission.fund. And I didn't have any money. I just wanted to serve the poor. Like that was just sort of, and I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm like, I don't want to just feed them. I want to teach them how to fish. So how do we do that? And I basically like literally made a few trips and set up this charity that takes care of just literally 26 kids that are hand selected, and they get food every day, 5 days out of the week, and they spend a few hours in an AC classroom, and they have computers. They don't have computers at home. They have mentors who teach them about that you can become a professional, right? They don't know anybody like that in their little, it's like the slums. They they learn English. So all these things help them become employable, both the mindset and the skill. And I basically set it up, and I tap shoulders. Hey, can you give me some money? And like it's a tiny budget and everything. So from my perspective, and I did work in a big charity eventually. My first job when I moved to the States 21 years ago was with this big charity. I was the director for Latin America. But in my little charity, we have like, okay, I think 15% are overhead admin top sort of expenses. The rest goes into the project in one way or another, right? There's a board. So America is a really good place for that, where those things are clear. It's public notice. If you have a charity, all of your finances are public. They have to be, because you're tax exempt. So there's really good mechanisms in America to keep that pretty transparent. But I would say anywhere where the government gets involved, things get really messy and murky, right? And sort of part of the things that Elon Musk and Doge were doing in a very, honestly, just over the top way, was shutting down whole government charity agencies, right? I think they were addressing against just the theater, right? It's the theater of it.
Yeah, it is.
Is that they were addressing
very of efficiency or something.
Yeah, exactly. They were addressing a very real thing, which is when the money belongs to no one, meaning the government. Politicians who control it, there's doorkeepers who can channel that money to certain things. They can channel them with sort of strings attached, political agendas, all those things, right? And then the right people. So that's a very real danger, and it just happens, and it's impossible to not have. So so I think that's why in America, in a very positive spin of this, is that a lot of America is the most generous country in the world when it comes to charities that are non-government charities, which I think it really makes them much more clean. And because a lot of them are mom and pop, just like mine, right? They're just a teeny tiny little thing, which is trying to
transparency.
Yeah, and there's less money to be like fought over. Like I don't like all I do is just tap private donors. Hey, can you give me 5K? That kind of thing. So it's so it's like it's not a big deal. And a lot of the charities are that, but it adds up, right? They do a lot of good.
Of course.
But on the government level, I think there is definitely a place of this big money initiatives, and you can't shut those down. It's stupid to shut those down. So I was, yeah, of course, because look, this is where America can be the good guy, because America has the money, right? And if you can spend it on military action, or you can spend it on massive, large scale aid. And there's ways that this gets.
We know where it's going in the U.S.
yeah, exactly. But for example, I worked for a big charity in my first year when I was here. I was director for Latin America, but because I was in those circles, I was friends with people who were doing, for example, work at the very peak of the AIDS epidemic in Africa, and it was like the plague in Africa. Like they were not equipped to fight it, and there were people dying by the tens of thousands and millions, right? And the U.S. government created under, I think it was George Bush, this program called PEPFAR, the President's something initiative. And PEPFAR, which was a government aid program, saved millions of lives in Africa, millions of lives. And it's by far the only player on the world stage who could do that, and they did do that, and that doesn't get acknowledged, that doesn't get supported, that doesn't get also highlighted, in all this theater stuff, but millions of life, and no amount of mom and pop charities can do that when tragedy hits, like the AIDS epidemic, right, or a famine, in the Sudan or something like that, and so I think there's definitely a good place for large scale government aid, disaster relief, especially that sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Well, Christian, it was great talking to you. You're definitely a wealth of knowledge and insight. I mean, your life experiences alone, it's like the experience of maybe 3-4 different lives.
Yeah, that's true.
You've been a you've definitely seen a lot and experienced a lot. Do you have any final words for our audience before we end the podcast?
I mean, I would say, my appeal would be, don't outsource your happiness and your agency to anybody. Take care of your family, take care of your talent. You have a life, you have talents, you have expertise. Find a place where that has the most impact and serves more people, and that'll be my appeal.
That's great. I mean, that's great advice. Guys, thank you for watching another episode of A to the Show. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.
Thanks, Christian. We're out.